obedience training and what the purpose of obedience training is. The purpose of obedience training is to move the dog from place to place so that we may do our job in an efficient manner. The dog must not only be well behaved, but he must be able to function in many stressful situations that could arise each day. In order to do this, we must develop at least two different postures while working with the dog. Our normal posture seen in Patrol 1 should show the dog to be safely under the handler's control. The second posture shown is for tactical situations where you have to use your firearm or work with a group. The platform for obedience is your vehicle. The dog must be tolerant of people around you. It doesn't mean that they have to be friendly, but they have to be tolerant. You have to be able to move the dog safely around the people in your community. This is so important. If you pull this dog out and they're snarling and growling and trying to bite everybody, you are making no friends. And it's the worst thing you can have happen to you, to have the community turn on you. The dog must understand that your firearm is part of your job. Improper training causes this to become a problem. And if you don't do this right from the beginning, when you pull your firearm, you can't use it because the dog thinks that only bad guys have guns. And it's something that we have got to change. We start from the beginning with the posturing. The dog's got to be able to stay in position at your side in a tactical situation where your attention may be required elsewhere. If you're in a bad situation and you've got your weapon out, you don't have time to be looking at this dog. You have to know he's going to be where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. See the dogs working together. Not only do they need to be able to work together, but they also can't be distracted by animals in the neighborhoods or other dogs in the community. They have to be able to work under the stressful situation. You see the handler here working the dog, making the dog respond to position. If you have your weapon out, you don't have time to be grabbing this dog. And this is something that takes a lot of work, but it could save your life or save someone else's life. So obviously it's well worth it. The dog's got to be able to work as a part of a team, and that's a group of people in addition to the handler. If you can't do this exercise, then when you do need help, they can't come because the dog won't allow them to work with you. And you're going to be outnumbered, which is a real bad feeling. Now let's get started with obedience training. Prepare yourself before getting out the dog. Go to the bathroom, get a drink, smoke a cigarette, hang up the phone, do whatever it takes so that these things are taken care of and you're not interrupted while you're trying to train. Wear comfortable but protective clothing so that in the process you're not scratched or made uncomfortable by the dog. Pain can make your patience short, and that's bad for training. Remember that if the dog has no training, he does not know what you expect of him. Make his experience a positive one, and he'll learn faster. Take time. Show the dog what you want him to do. He hasn't had an education, so this is a very important time so that he understands that if he does what you want him to do, that he gets a reward for good behavior. But he has to understand what you want. Then he'll begin to work for the reward. Use a soft posture and a calm voice. Don't yell at the dog and jerk on the dog. Everything should be just taken along at an easy pace, and you'll see if the dog is allowed to do so, he will learn on his own, and things will go along smoother, and what you teach him will stay in place. As the dog begins to understand, start to firm up the structure of training. Maybe don't give him so much time to get in the position that you want him to be in. And when he's in position, praise him. Get him to look at you, work with you. At this point in time, his performance is getting him his reward. This type of training creates a positive experience for the dog and teaches him that through performance comes reward. Now let's take a look at how the correction is being done in this session. I'm setting the length of the leash, or the space that the dog is to work in. This allows the dog to find that boundary on his own. The dog learns how to stay within the space through self-correction. Here, when the dog tries to forge ahead, I simply hold the leash to keep him within bounds. This is an example of what we're talking about. As you can see the dog pulling on the leash, I'm simply keeping the leash set to hold him in position. And when he realizes that he is not where he should be, he corrects himself to get his reward. Watching the dog, he has already learned where he should be and how he should act while with the handler. This took the amount of time it took for you to watch the video that you're watching now. After you've worked the dog, allowing him to self-correct a few times, and you're sure that he knows what you expect as far as heel and sit, you can begin to ask him to do these things on your time schedule instead of his own. We do this by taking over when the correction is given. The dog should have the chance to perform on his own, but if he performs slower than we would like, we will correct him. In this way, we inform the dog that we expect him to perform in a timely manner to receive his reward. Understanding how to give the correction and using the collar. Now we're going to talk about how to give a correction to the dog. The very most important thing is to think about what it is that you're doing. All you're trying to do is to get the dog to perform the task at the time and in the way that you want him to work. The correction is used to get compliance from the dog and to help form habits which develop into methods. These methods enable us to work safely around the public while doing our job. As you saw a few minutes ago, we're going to use a 2x4 and a nail to illustrate the way in which a correction should and should not be administered. The first thing you're going to see is someone who goes about training without really thinking about what they're doing, and they try too hard. If you watch again, you'll see that the hammer misses the nail. If proper planning is not in place, all the effort put into training accomplishes nothing. And remember, time is only valuable when you do something with it worth doing. If you look at the hammer mark left on the 2x4, this represents damage to the dog or to the program by training not properly planned or administrated. If you look at the nail, it hasn't moved. Therefore, we've accomplished nothing while causing damage to the dog and the program by not planning properly. These two things are what keeps programs from getting off the ground, and sometimes people don't even realize that they're doing it. The two things often responsible for program failure: bad training and poor supervision. Now you see the hammer is being just set on top of the nail, and though the person holding the hammer is pushing as hard as they can, there's still nothing happening. There's no training being accomplished. There's no damage being done, but there's no training. This is what happens when you don't apply force properly. Now you see the hammer being used properly to administer the training in a way in which the training is accomplished and no damage is done to the dog. This is how you want to do it, at your own pace, but in a way that you will accomplish something without causing damage. You see it again. The way this hammer is being used, it would tell me that it's a rookie carpenter, which actually works out to be that it's a rookie handler. Now when we put the hammer in the hand of a little bit more experienced carpenter, you can see that there's more force and the training is more exact. What this comes down to is the longer you train, the better you become at it, especially if you do it right. Now that we've shown the dog what we expect and he has learned that proper performance brings reward, we can bring more structure to the training and teach the dog that he must work on our schedule. Planning ahead saves time. At times anybody can be at a loss for how to accomplish the goals for the session. I like to get out there, relax, set up a little course with the cones, and mentally prepare myself to work the dog. Once that's done, I get out the dog. As you can see, I work the dog in circles to the right in the beginning. Just seems to be able to help the dog to pay attention and to work the way I want him to. Now let's talk about footwork. This first example is of how not to do it. They walk forward, they give the heel command, and they slam on the brakes. This does not allow the dog any time to stop and sit, and the dog will end up in front of you every time. Now watch and listen to this. Notice that the sit command is given, and then approximately another step and a half is being taken before the handler actually comes to a stop. This allows the dog to prepare and to get sitting so that he's at your side and not in front of you. This footwork is really important, and if you can learn how to do it, it'll help you in the long run. Here you see that I'm starting to make him perform at the time when I want him to perform. If you watch very closely, you see these subtle little taps with the leash. That's kind of like the taps on the nail in the 2x4. This allows him to do the exercise, and you can see this time he sits right down because he knows that I'm going to correct him if he doesn't. But the small little tapping corrections allow the dog to complete the exercise without interruption. A correction is too hard and he'll lose concentration and you'll have to start over. A correction that is too easy, or if you're constantly pulling the leash tight, causes him to begin to ignore you. You're nothing more than annoyance to the dog. So you have to use those little short, snappy jerks or taps like you saw with the nail in the 2x4. The dog's given an opportunity once you start to correct him. You see these little corrections? It's nothing major, just little corrections. And if the dog doesn't want to perform, the correction gets a little harder. As you can see, by using these little corrections, the dog begins to perform in a very easy manner. You see here, I'm starting to make the circle to the left now. At first the dog bumps me a little bit. He's not really sure where he's supposed to be, but if you watch him, he begins to develop a little space where we're not bumping into each other all the time. Notice he comes into the correction quite nicely. Another thing to realize is that the dog gets to make a choice. He can perform the exercise and get his reward automatically, or he can perform the exercise after he's given a correction and he'll get his reward, but he'll have to perform whether he does it voluntarily or not. And if you watch this dog here, he's starting to get a little bit tired. That's why he's starting to resist the correction a little bit. And this is my signal that it's time to put him away and maybe pull him out later that day. Now you have basic knowledge on how to get started in obedience. Go out and give it a try. If you need to, return to the video. Most of what you need is right here. Have fun. Get it done.